Hey, everybody, welcome again to Each Channel News. We've got Lee Ramsey on the line. He's a senior product manager of Syncro MSP. We've been doing a lot of stuff about their whole journey and what's going on at Syncro MSP, and it's quite remarkable, man, what they're doing, especially in the M365 world with Microsoft. And we're going to dig into that even more today. First of all, welcome, Lee. How are you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Happy to be here. Happy to join Syncro. I'm really excited about what we're doing and really excited to talk about it.
Here you go, man. Well, let's double down on this. So, M365, everybody's using it. Obviously, it's like
Yeah.
the thing that we're based. Many MSPs are based their business on, right? So, what's your thoughts? First of all, let's kick this off with where do you see M365 with the MSP, and what are the problems, the challenges you think they're having in this space?
Sure. I mean, there's a ton of them, right? Just generally, I think the IT landscape is pretty tricky right now with AI, with security. In a lot of ways, MSPs, I think they sort of got handed the security problem with cloud, right? They were kind of used to some of the break fix, the IT servers that were in a closet tucked away that they could kind of protect with hardware.
Hmm.
And then, moving to the cloud, now it's, everything's open to everybody. And so I think that's a really big problem. But, beyond that, I think M365 and cloud-based solutions generally, the biggest problem you have is managing multiple tenants, right?
Hmm.
Microsoft is great for admins. It has a lot of powerful tools, and they're, building out more capability to help MSPs manage at scale. But a lot of that's still manual. Like, it gives them visibility, but it really doesn't give them efficiency gains. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge that they're facing is how do you make sense of this huge landscape, all the different tools, all the different licensing, and how do you take advantage of all that power and build a business around it? I think that's really the challenge that MSPs are faced with today.
It's a lot of stuff that's packed into M365, right?
Yeah.
If you really want to fly to the moon, you probably could, but it takes a lot of energy and effort because everything is like one by one, and there's a lot of other challenges. But look, everybody uses M365, right?
Mhm.
So, how do you see MSPs leveraging that as a differentiator in their competitive advantages? Is it possible?
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely is possible, right? We talk to MSPs every day who are doing a great job at that. We talk to some MSPs who are still struggling with it. There's a pretty wide gamut of experience and how people are differentiating their offerings. But I think the key result when we really talk to those who are being successful is standardizing their offering,
Hmm.
picking something like a business premium licensing, which gives both the MSP and the customer a lot of value. And in particular for the MSP, it gives you a lot more to hang your hat on, so to speak. So you can develop IP, insert products, or your own services around some of the more crunchy features that are in something like Business Premium. So things like Purview and data protection and governance, things like Defender on the security side. So really, it's really key to build to, give your customer that value that's in those types of licenses, but it's also really helpful to provide a scaffolding for your own IP and services to your customer. And I think Microsoft 365 in general is really great, a great place to do that. And then I think something like Business Standard and Standardize, or sorry, Business Premium and standardizing on it
Hmm.
is a
Yeah.
really good way to start.
Yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, right? If you want to scale anything, you got to standardize. You can't make a customized job for everybody, right? It'll be like,
Right.
oh, we won't go home, right? So when you look at that as a challenge, right, for MSPs, it kind of makes a lot of sense. What are some of the signs that you're seeing, right, with the MSPs in terms of like, man, you guys are struggling with this? Like, do you do a two-factor authentication review and say, oh my God, 99% of your customers don't have it? Like, what do you do? How do you figure it out?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things, right? I think one way you can, I think you mentioned it, right? One way you can tell if you're not standardizing your offering or not coming through on that sort of promise of seamless delivery is like you're never going home, right? You're treating every customer as a
Yeah.
snowflake. You're doing a lot of one-off projects. And so, making sure that you're able to standardize using tools like Syncro XMM that monitor and manage it, M365, as well as traditional stacks and hardware, things like that on the RMM side, your own business heuristics and metrics on the PSA side is really key. Because otherwise, and talking to partners, what you see is a couple of different problems that show up in the business, in the people, and in the delivery, right? So on the business side, you may run into this problem that's pretty common, where MSPs are kind of at a precipice where they feel like they're mature enough to start growing and getting more customers, but they're kind of locked into this kind of delivery hell
Mm.
where they can't quite loosen up enough time to acquire new and onboard new customers. That's where the most of the work is. So they need to hire more people, but to do that, they need more revenue. To do that, they need more customers, and there's kind of this vicious cycle. Or you can also see on the flip side where they are able to acquire a bunch of new customers, and it feels like they're growing like crazy. The revenue's looking great, but their profit margins razor thin. So that's another really good way on the business side to see if that delivery and that standardization and that process is healthy. And then I think you start seeing that in the people too, right? Techs are spread too thin. You start seeing missed SLAs, missed deadlines, things not being configured quite correctly, customer dissat. And then on the people side, burnout, right? You start seeing churn in your own company and you start seeing techs burning out. That's a huge problem in our industry, which is very much, 24/7, 365. So making sure you have processes in place to help with all that is key.
Lee, you make some good points. And so these are the kind of things that MSPs, especially management, should be looking for, right? I mean, if your team is sort of like in chaos mode and can't get out, always working too much, eventually something is going to break, all right? And you want to ask the question, like, what's going on? Why is this happening, right? Because on one end, the techs are trying to do the best they can, but you
Mhm.
got to balance, scalability, standardization with, but this customer like it this way, so
Yeah.
you don't want to go back to like one by one by one. So how do you balance that, man?
Sure. Yeah, I think of it, and this is a problem that isn't unique to IT. I mean, it manifests uniquely, but this is a problem for telcos. It's a problem
Yeah.
for large scale logistics provider. It's the last mile problem, right? Which is that your fundamental core, your baseline is standardized, right? You have a really structured process, but that last mile, like how do you get the package to Lee Ramsey's house,
Yeah.
right? I know how to get it to the, I know how to get a ton of packages to my warehouse. How do I get that one package that's Lee's to him? And it's the same thing with IT, right? Which is, 90%, 95% of the general configuration for something like Microsoft 365, you can standardize. But then, you're going to have that one customer who, they have that one Windows XP machine because they have that one piece of software from the early 2000s that's never going to get updated. That machine's never going to get updated, and their whole business depends on it, right? And like that, there's infinite numbers of those stories. And
Yeah.
so being able to have a process that allows you to create that standardized configuration and then do this like kind of last mile micro adjustments. So being able to document them and also being able to kind of mark those so that your team understand them, but that you're not having to do 50, 75, hundreds of different individual tiny little customizations for every one of your customers. And I think that's the key to balance is really just making sure that you have a good process in place, good standardization in place, and then you have a process for that kind of last mile problem.
Yeah, and those customers is kind of weird. Spend some energy in migrating them to like the new world,
Yeah,
right? Because on the other hand, what they're using is probably a security risk, right? Because
absolutely.
it's sort of an island, and I don't know what's going on, but it might be important to your company, but is a cybersecurity breach more important? That maybe trumps that to a degree. I don't know, man. It's a upgrade them is all I'm saying, right?
Yeah. Is it worth the risk? Yeah. And being able to paint that picture, super important.
So you've got this thing called Syncro. I think it's called what, XMM or something like that. What
Mhm.
what is it? And why does this matter, man?
Yeah, absolutely. So XMM is really the evolution of MSP tooling, right? So it's really to take that step beyond, kind of look around the curve, get away from simply just that RMM PSA mentality, and really focus on a cloud first, security first, simplified and unified platform, right? The goal really there is to simplify operations for our MSPs. They're stretched thin, their margins are razor thin, and it's tough to just manage the just sheer amount of things. M365 aside, their customers are also expecting them to manage all of their other cloud applications, right? That they're using for whatever. There's so many. And then making sure that that's all based on scalability, and then of course based on a stronger security posture for both the MSP and their customer. Really, that's the goal of XMM, and that's what we're doing here at Syncro.
So I mean, most of these MSPs, right, they're using the PSA RMM type
Mhm.
route, right? So what do you tell them, man? Like, what are you doing right now compared to the XMM route? What's the case? How do you make that case?
Sure. Yeah, I think the basic one is that you really have this sort of tech sprawl, right? It's just like look at your tech stack right now,
Yeah.
right? You probably have somewhere between 15 and 50 different applications that you're using, not only applications that you're selling into your customer base, but also that you're using to manage different aspects of their IT. And so I guess my case would be, hey, come get some tools that help you actually reduce some of that tech stack, right? Allow you to scale, allow you to standardize. Don't stress your team out so much because they're able to kind of stay in one place, and they don't have to suffer from things like password and MFA fatigue, where they're constantly having to like cycle into an M365 portal for each of their customers, or cycle into a number of different cloud applications to manage, right? Come to one place where you can manage M365, your ticketing, your RMM for devices, things like that, right? Really, it's all about scalability, like we've been talking about, simplification, and then, of course, just backing that all with a strong security posture.
So Lee, if they transition right from the
Mhm,
older ways, which I mean,
mhm.
even with AI, right, then that's making that archaic, right? But when you
Yeah.
transition to the new way of doing things, right, what are some of the outcomes you can get? I mean, like, are there what percentage of time they're going to be saving? How many more customers can they do in the same amount of time? Is there some metrics around that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the biggest thing that we see is that partners and MSPs are actually able to take on more customers because you're able to streamline their overall delivery mechanisms, the management in particular, right? The way I think about it is there's typically sort of three-ish phases where you kind of have the customer acquisition phase, you have which is like discovery and getting them in, selling them on your business, your propositions, your differentiators in the market. Then there's this piece where you're actually having to, do the initial setup and work, which typically takes the most amount of time. And then there's monitoring and maintenance, right? And so making sure that you have tooling and a platform like Syncro XMM that'll allow you to make efficiency gains in each of those categories, right? So it's easier to acquire customers. It's easier to onboard them because you have like standardized templates that you can just apply, right? And then, hey, having tooling that automates management for you and monitoring for you, so you don't have to, get bogged down in reports every week, month, quarter, whatever that cadence is. You just have a system that tells you when something's different, when there's drift, those kinds of things from a configuration that you've set up or from your standards.
Do you think that maybe we're talking like they can do 20, 30, 40, 50% more clients? Is there like a number, ballparkish?
That's a good question. I don't know that I have those specifics just yet. Those will be coming for sure, right? I mean, we launched XMM just a little while ago. Some of them 365 features just got out of early access in our NGA. So, we're still working with our MSPs on a
Mhm.
lot of that, but we're hearing great things from the industry. We're hearing great things, amazing feedback from our MSPs. And so, as we sort of walk down this road, hand in hand with our
Yeah,
partners and our MSPs, right? More of that's going to come out, and we're going to be able to put
for sure.
hard numbers to the things we're hearing anecdotally.
Very curious to know what the numbers are. But in reality is,
Good.
right, if you
Mhm.
can make the life of an MSP easier, right, that's level one. I mean, just that
Mhm.
alone is going to
Yeah,
get
yeah.
them to be able to leave and go home a little bit earlier, right? And that's probably, that's great enough, right? But if you can do that and allow the MSP to scale and
Mhm.
not just scale, but actually become more accurate, right? Do deliver better, higher quality of service,
Mhm.
right? Then you're firing in different cylinders, right? There's more value here, here, and here, as opposed to like it making you do things faster and cheaper and all that stuff. So whenever those numbers pop up, man, keep me posted. I'd love to share that as
Absolutely.
well. So Lee, let's put on your crystal ball hat, right, for a second here, and to look at
Sure.
where the hell is 365 going, man? I mean, it's a beast, right? Where it's going now.
Yeah, I mean it's a good question, and that's that's the $1 million question. Well, it's like a I don't know, multi-billion dollar question, really, right? When it comes
Trillion
down to
dollar probably by now.
it. Yeah, exactly. Uh, so I mean, looking around the corner, looking around the curve a little bit, putting on that, looking into that crystal ball, I think the biggest things that we're seeing coming out of that and the evolution of M365. I mean, AI is for sure going to be one of them. I think we're going to start seeing more indexing on data hygiene, data protection. Those kinds of things are going to start becoming more critical. And then, of course, I think security is going to continue to be the hot button issue that it is. But when you kind of take those three pieces and look at them, sort of the advent of AI is making, there's an old, garbage in, garbage out from the like old computing days. It's kind
Mhm.
of like lost vogue. But now that
Yeah.
AI is back in the picture, it's more true than ever. So seeing the way that the market's shifting around, data from, need to protect it because that's what bad actors and cyber attacks are targeting and focused on. Looking at data as a sort of playground or feeding ground for your own internal or your customers' AI. So making sure that the data is clean, you have good hygiene, good practices. You're teaching those kinds of things to your customers is going to be important. And then, of course, using Microsoft's tools like Purview and things like that to help with data loss protection, sensitivity labels, those kinds of things. I think are going to become really, really big and really important as we start continuing down. And then, AI is general, but I think what we're going to start seeing and we're starting to see a little bit with Copilot now, is that MSPs are going to be called on, I think, a little bit more to do a little bit more maybe vibe coding or
Mm.
engineering on that aspect, right? They're going to be creating agents for their customers. That's going to be something that's in demand because their customers don't have that technical expertise, and I think that's going to fall squarely on the MSP shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, totally. I mean, isn't it crazy how much workload is
Yeah,
being required for MSPs like every like I don't know year, adding
yeah,
more compliance, regulations, cybersecurity, and now the beast of AI, right? And
yeah.
MSPs are really struggling even to use AI in their own world, let
Mhm.
alone go out there and teach their customers proper AI hygiene and how to leverage this stuff. How should an MSP approach that, man? Should they go back to like AI school or something? Like, how do they get the skill?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's another really great question and one that sort of everybody's asking, right? It's not only
Yeah.
our industry, but you're seeing basically every industry. Like, how can I leverage this to make my job easier to do that? But again, I think you make a really good point, which is that MSPs are always at so that bleeding edge of technology. It all just kind of falls on their lap where the theoretical nature of technology really meets the hard business reality of like how do you make this work in the real world with real data sets and real people. That has always been the sort of MSP challenge and struggle. And I think the best way, and AI is such an interesting tool because the best way is just to use it,
Mm.
right? So, in your day to day, instead of Googling something, because everybody in tech really good at their Google foo, just, use ChatGPT, use Copilot, use Gemini instead. Ask your questions there. Obviously, make sure to validate the answers you're getting, because that's still a problem in the industry. The data piece is tricky and hallucinations are a thing. But, as you go through your day to day, it's just familiarity with those tools. And I think back to the early M365 days and cloud days, right? Which was that Microsoft created incentivized programs to get MSPs to migrate themselves over to Microsoft 365 because they knew that if they were familiar with it, if they were technologically proficient in the tools they were using, they'd be more effective at selling it to their customers. And AI is exactly the same, right? Which is that familiarity will allow them to be more comfortable, which will translate into better conversations and better results for their customers and ultimately for their business.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you don't know how to use something, you can't really sell it, right? So you're to make an assumption, but the bigger picture here, Lee, is that AI is such a beast, right? It's
Yeah.
beyond a co-pilot. It's beyond
Oh
an
yeah.
so there's so many different things that, as a matter of fact, if you were to pull all the C-suite of customers, the first thing they'll tell you is AI is going to change their business and life forever, and they're all scrambling to figure out how to use AI, but not just as an agent, but how to use it in their business, their processes, and
Mhm.
trying to figure out how their salespeople should be using it and how they should use it in marketing. I mean, you could go down the rabbit hole and never come back up, with AI, right?
It's
Um,
true.
so, and I think the future of an MSP, I don't know if you agree with me with this, but they better kind of understand where their customers are headed in their AI journey, because
Mhm.
you don't want to be left out of that conversation, right?
Absolutely. No, I agree 100%. I mean, even there's a couple interesting pieces in there, but even I don't know, 5 years ago, like the thing we were talking about, we were having basically this almost exact same conversation about security, right?
Yeah.
Customers were, part MSPs were having trouble selling security into customers because it's like, well, hey, aren't you already responsible for that? But the landscape was changing and growing, and costs were going up and things like that. And so, what you kind of saw was this reticence to engage, and then what ended up happening were, people would lose customers because they weren't having meaningful conversations about security, and other MSPs were. And AI is exactly the same, which is that you have to understand, like you said, you have to understand the journey that your customers on with AI, because they're on one, whether they want to admit it or not, whether they think they are or not, whether they've said they are or not,
Whether they care or
um,
not, they're on
whether
one.
they care or not, they're on it, because their business, their industry is going to be reshaped and changed by AI in some way. And so, MSPs need to have that conversation, get comfortable with AI, and because it's like the old adage, like if you're not talking to them about AI, your competition certainly will. And so it's
Yeah.
really, really important to have those conversations.
And you don't want to leave AI to help the customers figure out their AI journey, because then,
Right.
then where do we fit in, right? So,
Yeah. So blind leading the blind then, right? Because it's just like
I
that
just keep
feedback loop of.
right on. So give me some advice, man.
Mhm.
I'd pass on some advice to these MSPs. Like, so they're offering they're doing the 365 thing. Like, what should they do? How can they take that, what they've built today, and build I don't want to say an empire out of it, but to kind of like build their own world to differentiate themselves and make themselves more
Mhm.
sticky with the client, and at the end of the day, deliver better experience, right, for their customers. What's advice you're going to give them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think we've talked about some of those things, right? I think
Yep.
standardization is going to be key. So, being able to um, create and quickly deploy baseline configuration policies, things like that, to Microsoft 365. Um, Outsource is a kind of a naughty word. I don't mean it exactly that way, but allow your techs to sort of use automation and to their advantage, so that things that, like, password resets, MFA resets, all those kind of like nickel and dime things, death by a thousand cut actions that you're taking every day, every week, those kinds of things. Get a platform that's going to allow you to do those seamlessly, so in the same place that you're already working for ticketing. Syncro XMM, great place to do that.
Yeah.
um, but then beyond that, it's really important to partner with your vendors. So not only just like have a vendor, have a software tool, but make sure that they're a strategic partner in your business. One of the things that I've really loved about Syncro, and one of the reasons I came to this company from my old ones, is because I really saw the passion for the MSP within the leadership here in this company, and then also the willingness and desire to really be that strategic partner, and to kind of take that bold step with MSPs into this new world where it's cloud first, AI first, cybersecurity first. and really be, unafraid to take those steps together. And I think that's really, really important. So finding those partnerships, standardizing your offerings, and then building your service offerings sort of around M365 and I would say business premium is a pretty good place to start. Start hooking in those services along with, your general process standardization that you're working towards. So I would say those are the main things.
Makes a lot of sense to me, man. As a matter of fact, I don't know what else you should do. I mean, that makes perfect
Right.
sense to me. So, Lee, give us a bit of your background, man. How did you
Sure.
get here?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think yeah, the funny thing about like, product management is you ask any product manager how they got there, and it's just wildly different paths, which is always kind of funny. So I started in a small startup then called Skykick. They were they're founded by two ex-Microsoft folks, and they basically focused on M365 migration. So they're migrating old Exchange, Lotus Notes, IMAP email,
Wow.
Google to Microsoft 365 in its kind of nascent form. I started on the phones, talking with MSPs, working them through automated projects for email migrations, and then moved into some account management for larger accounts, managed some account management teams to get really familiar kind of with the business space, the challenges that partners have, particularly with Microsoft 365 and cloud, as it was kind of becoming, well, it's new and then, becoming this huge thing that's gobbled up the IT landscape, and then into product management. I wanted to build things to help this industry because they need help. They're the front lines of technology, truly, and it's both a scary position for them to be in, can also be a really lucrative one. But I think it's really cool to be able to be on that kind of bleeding edge of technology. And again, I think I said it before, but where sort of the rubber meets the road, so to speak. It's the theoretical new tech against real world business problems and challenges. Where else would you
Good
want to
stuff,
be?
man. What's really cool of what I like about Syncro, MSP, beyond all the cool stuff you guys do with your platform and all that stuff, is that the humans there, man. You guys seem to be very centric around MSPs and Microsoft. And that's exactly where the rubber meets the road. That's where the actual MSPs are. They need to crack that nut first. And if they can get that, streamlined, like then you can pile on all these other things. But if you're still struggling to stay ahead of all
Mm-hmm.
that things you got to do to keep Microsoft, alive, so to speak, right? Then how do you do anything else, right? You need to
Right.
got to start there, man. Lee, I'll leave you with the last word, man. Last word. What do you want everybody to know, and how do they reach you guys?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. You can reach us on all the things. So you can find me uh, all over the place. So I'm on LinkedIn, I'm in Reddit. So are we. We have a really vibrant community as well. Obviously, you can check us out on our website, and come talk to us. And I think the last thing I guess I'll leave you with, and something you said really resonated with me, is that beyond all of this, we've had a really great conversation about tech and the evolution of technology and where it's going and how difficult it is to manage. But at the end of the day, it is technology, but it is a people business. So making sure that, while we're doing all of these things, that we're keeping in mind that behind every computer screen is a human being, and being able to connect with them in a meaningful way. Also a really powerful tool in your arsenal to grow your business. And also, I think it streamlines a lot of things on the tech side too.
Good stuff, man. Hey, man, keep us posted on things that are coming along. And bottom line for you folks out there is that using the right tools is going to get you more time. And apparently, time, last time I checked, is the most valuable thing that we have. So, more time to do whatever you want, man, work or, have fun. So, good stuff. Lee, thank you and keep us posted. Cheers.
Absolutely. Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Cheers.